Okay?
Sure.
And I'm thinking about this because of the work that we want to do at our house. And we have gutters that need to be changed and all that things. And I said to my wife, I said, if someone comes to clean the gutters, a handyman, right? Mm-hmm. He asked if we can use the ladder that we have in the garage.
Right.
And I told my wife, I don't care if it's a brand new ladder, don't you dare give him that ladder. Because if he falls through it, if he missteps, I don't know. Let him bring his own ladder. If he doesn't have it, then he can't do the job. I'm nervous about hiring him anyway.
Well, I mean, in general, I think that's really a good standard to have anyhow, because if anybody's going to be working on your house and isn't able to bring a basic tool of a ladder,
right.
Probably not a good idea to have them working on your house.
Right. But he did ask, can I use that ladder that was in the garage? And I was like, no.
It's broken.
And I don't know if that's, if I give him a ladder to use on a job that he himself wants to use, and he's asking me to use a ladder, am I responsible if he falls off that ladder?
It's possible that you could be.
Right.
Yeah.
So that ladder now is a ladder, of course, that you own.
Right.
And if that ladder is defective in some way, and you were aware of it beforehand, so let's say that you knew that ladder was the type of ladder that didn't stand straight or was wobbly.
Okay.
And you were aware of that, particularly if you're aware that someone got hurt, fell off that ladder before, you've now opened yourself up for possible exposure.
Right.
Whereas if, of course, if you didn't use that ladder, you wouldn't have that issue. The other issue with a ladder is that, and I have had cases dealing with ladders at people's homes, is even if you have the possibility of having a manufacturer in the equation, the thing is that it may not be a manufacturing defect. It may be a defect that occurred, after the ladder was purchased. Maybe it wasn't used properly.
Right.
Maybe
or stored properly or anything.
Or stored properly or not. You're right. So there's a lot of different things that could happen with that. I just kind of have that sense. Amanda, I think you'd agree.
Yes, I agree. I think you're better off in your scenario having them bring their own ladder.
So, that being said, didn't go with this person, so we are hiring a company that does clean gutters, and, they are licensed, they are insured, but is it my responsibility, if they're working on the outside of the house, where the grounds are uneven, things like that, to provide them with a safe work environment? Is that, if they fall, is that my responsibility?
So that's an interesting question. So we were talking about earlier on the show, when we were talking about the idea of certain types of construction accidents and what we call strict liability. Is it a construction site? So in general, I can answer that you would not be responsible in general for what you just talked about because it is a 1 or 2 family home, and there's an exception to that under the labor law. However, that does not mean that you still couldn't get sued for negligence. And so common law negligence simply means is like you'd sue anybody else, saying, hey, you didn't act reasonably under the circumstances, okay? So let's say that it's a 1 or 2 family home, and you're not, in fact, in that case, supervising the job. Now, if you were supervising the job and really taking control of it, you could have liability under the labor law. You could have liability. But let's say you were not. But let's say that there was something about the premises that you were aware that you had created that was unsafe. So what if you had an area where you had put a board over it? It was a hole, and you put the board over that hole. And it was sort of covered up, but not covered up well enough. If you created that condition, you as the homeowner, you could absolutely be liable for negligence. And so when you bring somebody onto your premises, even though it may not be that you're involved in the construction process, you still have to protect them from what a reasonable person would expect from happening.
So let's say you have a general contractor, and the general contractor hires all the workers in the house. Am I still responsible for what you just described? Or is the general contractor now responsible? He should inspect the property before he starts hiring his guys to fix up the home.
So, Amanda, why don't you go with that?
So I think, again, it's the same scenario. It could be you both could be responsible because under the labor law, both the general contractor and the owner of the premises can be held strictly liable. Obviously, it depends again on the circumstances. Like Ken said, are you there overseeing all of the work? Are you really?
But that's why you hire a general contractor, so you don't have to oversee everything.
But the thing is there's a factual question. So you may not have to do it. You may not be required to oversee it. But what if you're one of those people who can't help themselves? So when people come onto your property, you're the person that's always pointing the finger and saying, go here, go there, do this, do that. And even though you were not required to do that, you did it.
Right.
Now you've now taken a situation under the labor law where you may not have been liable before under the labor law. And now you are. However, let me tell you this. If you have a defect on your property,
Right.
okay, you have a big hole in the lawn. You've had that hole. You tell the contractors, okay, just come across this way. You know you've had that hole in the lawn, okay, for the last 5 years. And, your wife's been telling you to fill that hole in. Someone is going to get hurt.
Right.
And you just say, yeah. Nobody ever walks over there. But you forgot this time. You told them this is the best way to go.
Right.
Now somebody goes in there, falls in that hole, and hurts themselves.
Let's say they pointed out to the general contractor beforehand that there's a hole in the...
Well,
and the general contractors, I guess you could be liable as well, right?
Well, you'd have to look at the scenario. Well, you pointed it out to the general contractor. Okay, well, what was the general contractor going to do about it? Did you then have a conversation with the general contractor said, all right, well, I'm going to keep everybody away from that, or I'm going to put barriers around that, or I'm going to do something.
Right.
But as between, if you think about it, yourself and that third party,
Yeah.
okay, that third party who wasn't the general contractor, didn't have that conversation with you, should you now not have responsibility with a defect, a known defect that's on your property that you didn't do something about?